Exhaustion washed over me as I surveyed the last few remaining boxes filling my small living room. It had been a grueling day of packing, loading furniture into the moving truck, and unloading everything into the new house. As the sun began to set, the sounds of my roommates finishing up their rooms filtered down the stairs. "I think that's the last of it," came the muffled voice of my friend John from his bedroom across the hall. "Thank God," I called back gratefully. "Let's order a pizza to celebrate before we collapse for the night." A chorus of agreement sounded, and I pulled up the pizza delivery app to place our usual order while starting to break down the final few boxes. As I worked, I couldn't help taking in my new surroundings for the first time without the distraction and chaos of the move. It was a decent-sized rental home with plenty of space for the three of us to share comfortably. But as my roommates had started settling in earlier in the day, I had been too busy with transporting our belongings to fully inspect the place. Now, in the dimming light, I noticed a few strange characteristics to the old house that put me a bit on edge. The hardwood floors creaked and popped ominously with every movement, not just in my room, but throughout the entire home, as if reacting to invisible presences drifting about. The walls were paper-thin, too. I could hear every private conversation and sound clearly through them, no matter where in the house someone was. Most unsettling of all were the windows. Tall, arched Gothic panes stretched floor to ceiling in each room, curtain-less and exposing the interior gloomily to the darkness gathering quickly outside. As the last rays of daylight faded, the forested area surrounding the home seemed to close in, pressing threateningly against the thin barriers of glass, like peering eyes studying the new inhabitants within. Shaking off the peculiar aura of the place as just first night jitters, I finished my unpacking duties and joined the guys for some pizza and drinks in the living room. Our chatter and laughter soon broke through the lingering unease, added by the alcohol. Before long, pleasantly buzzed and drained from the day's exertion, we stumbled off to our rooms to pass out. I collapsed onto my bare mattress, fully clothed, falling deeply asleep within moments to the soothing sounds of rain beginning to fall outside. Then, an indistinguishable time later, something jolted me awake with a surge of panic. Heart pounding, ears straining through the fuzzy haze of interrupted sleep. I tried to identify what had triggered my abrupt return to consciousness. Nothing seemed amiss in the blackness of my room at first glance. Then, from the corner of my eye, I spotted movement near the tall arched window. A dim, silvery glow flowed through the rain-laced glass pane, illuminating a cloaked figure standing motionless, just outside. I froze in mute horror, certain my racing pulse must be audible through the thin walls to whoever or whatever was observing me from beyond the window. Cautiously rising up onto an elbow, I squint hard into the gloom, waiting for my sleep-blurred vision to clarify. As the shadowy form gradually coalesced through the veil of rain, a new chill snaked down my spine. A gaunt, pale face was now clearly defined, mere inches from the window, staring fixedly back at me with hollow eyes burning silvery white in the gloomy light. A surge of pure adrenaline flooded my system, and I scrabbled away backwards across the bed, blinking wildly, as if that alone could banish the impossible vision. In my haste, a foot tangled in the sheets, and I lost my balance, tumbling heavily to the hardwood floor with a loud crack. The figure's face shifted slightly at the noise, almost ponderously, as if intrigued by my reaction yet utterly removed. Its colorless stare bored relentlessly through the barrier, observing my reaction clinically. Panicked screams and gibbered curses tore from my throat as I frantically crab-walked across the floor until my back smashed against the wall. I sat frozen there, forcing myself to meet its otherworldly eyes for a few tense moments to assess if it meant to force entry. But it remained motionless, just observing, its features obscured once more in the gloom. Then, as suddenly as it had appeared, it smoothly turned and glided away out of the silvery glow of the window into the inky woods beyond, leaving me shaking wildly in its wake. I don't know how long I huddled there, reduced to a quivering mess by the utterly bizarre encounter. Finally, Unable to stand the isolation and horror of that room any longer, I blindly bolted from my room and pounded on John's door down the hall. His groggy, irritated face that emerged into the passage was the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen. "Jesus Christ, what?" he began before seeing the state I was in. I knew I must look half-mad, wild-eyed, and panicked, my words collapsing into incoherent babbling. But he understood this was no mere panic attack or nightmare, instantly ushering me inside and getting me a stiff drink, which I downed in one gulp before collapsing onto his floor. It took a long time, with many more shots of whiskey, before I was coherent enough to piece together the unearthly vision I'd seen by the window. As expected, both of my roommates' expressions shifted from disbelief to grave concern the more I described the pale, wraith-like figure gliding weightlessly outside my room. Neither had seen or heard anything amiss from their own bedrooms, which bordered on the front of the house, far from my now dreaded corner room facing the woods. By this point, the house was ominously silent once more, as if nothing had stirred it from its slumber. But none of us were eager to return to our solitary rooms after my disturbing account, so we bunked together uneasily in the living room before daybreak could offer some measure of safety again. Sleep evaded us the rest of the night, nerves still strung tight as bows waiting for some fresh sound or sign to send us fleeing into the dawn. But none ever came, and daylight filtering through the tall arched windows eventually eased some of the palpable tension choking the old house. My roommates went about making coffee with care not to wake whatever lingering spirits may still inhabit these walls. We spent that morning inspecting every inch of the home, hoping to find rational explanations for what I had witnessed. Yet no open or broken windows, doors, or other signs of intrusion could be found anywhere, no matter how hard logic strained. I knew in my bones there were some presences in this place, not meant for the living to observe so closely. That was the final straw. We immediately began contacting the landlord and moving companies to break our lease and vacate the property as quickly as possible. Who knows what otherworldly occupants may dwell within these rotting walls after dark. I have no intention of experiencing another supernatural visitation firsthand to find out. With any luck, the next tenants will remain blessedly ignorant of the entities lurking in the silvery glow beyond those immense arched windows after nightfall. I slammed the trunk of my car shut with mixed emotions as I surveyed our new home looming before me. On one hand, I was excited we had finally achieved our goal of buying a house after years of scrimping and saving for a decent down payment. But the old two-story Victorian we had purchased definitely brought some apprehension too. The reality was that this place had seen better days. Peeling paint, cracked gutters, and overgrown landscaping were just the surface issues. Who knew what state of disrepair might await us underneath all those layers of neglect and time? Still, for the price we paid, it was too good an opportunity to pass up. With a lot of sweat equity, I was sure we could restore it close to its former glory. My fiancée Erica joined me on the sidewalk, slipping an arm through mine as she took in our new domain. "Well, it definitely has potential," she said, ever the optimistic one. "Come on, babe, let's check out the inside before it gets dark." I popped the rusty padlock holding the front door closed and gave it a shove. It creaked open reluctantly to reveal a gloomy foyer beyond. Dust motes stirred in the bars of light slanting through dirty windows. We pulled our phones out to use as flashlights and ventured in for our first look around. The hardwood floors groaned under our footsteps, protesting any disturbance to their state of abandoned stillness. Layer upon layer of grime coated every surface so thickly it was impossible to tell what colors originally lay beneath. Dust coated the ceiling in drifts, inches thick like fresh fallen snow. I crunched across shards of plaster, littering the floor, inspecting the flaking antique crown molding overhead hopefully. Water damage is pretty bad up here. Gonna need replastering and painting at least, I remark. Erica nodded, scraping nail across a wall experimentally. The wallpaper is shot too. Rip it all off and insulate better once we repair that mess up there. We meticulously cataloged tasks as we explored further, opening doors to musty rooms of unpredictable horrors lurking behind each. The kitchen was a disaster area, but the old claw foot tub in the bathroom still held promise with a deep scrub. Our enthusiasm started to wane as the size of our undertaking became clearer with each new discovery. By the time we reached the second floor, exhaustion was setting in alongside the deepening shadows. I switched on my phone flashlight and pushed open the lone remaining door at the end of the upstairs hallway. The hinges squealed eerily, echoing off walls coated with peeling floral print wallpaper. Our lights cut feeble swaths through the cavernous darkness as we peered inside. A huge bay window dominated one wall, its sash windows long painted shut beneath curling decorative woodwork. Against the opposite wall crouched a massive antique armoire, sheets thrown over its bulky shape in a dramatic shroud. "Wow, look at the size of this master," Erica exclaimed, stepping past me into the room. I swept my phone over dusty hardwood planks, revealing strange spots that didn't look like normal aging or wear. "Hum must have had animals in here or something," I remarked, scuffing a toe tentatively at one stain questionably in the shape of a footprint. Something didn't seem quite right about the marks, but I shrugged it off, exhausted from our marathon exploration. "Well, this'll do for now, I guess, till we get the rest of the place settled," I said, dragging the musty sheets off the armoire and cracking it open experimentally. Its insides were blessedly rodent and insect-free. We moved our bags inside, planning to head to a motel in the morning after our first night in the house was over. I collapsed onto the bare, dusty mattress with a weary groan, setting an alarm for early to get started on cleaning the next day. Erica curled up next to me, already dozing off easily in that blissful state of exhaustion one can only achieve after a long, stressful day. However, sleep eluded me as I lay awake, listening to the night sounds of a strange old house settling around us. Creaks, scrapes, and groans echoed down the hallway from other unseen rooms. The wind rattled the shuttered window panes fitfully, creating a sense of being watched by some unseen presence. Erica's soft breathing was a rare comfort amidst the growing unease taking hold in my gut. Something about this place just didn't feel right, and my cop instincts, unused for so long in our boring suburban existence, were on high alert. I chalked it up to tiredness and nerves over such a huge project, gradually drifting off at last. I startled awake some unknown time later to a noise that sliced straight through my fatigue and confusion. The creak of hinges opening slowly somewhere nearby in the darkness. Erica was not beside me, and the sheets were thrown back on her side. My heart leapt into my throat as I fumbled clumsily for my phone with shaking hands. The feeble glow lit the empty room, revealing our bags untouched by the armoire door, now standing ajar. Dread rose chokingly as I registered scuff marks leading out to the hallway beyond. I scrambled after them on trembling legs, swinging my light wildly, but seeing nothing ahead in the black abyss of the upstairs corridor. "Erica," I shouted hoarsely, breaking into an unsteady run, desperate to find her. Silence greeted my cry, thick and suffocating as the darkness. I drew up short at the unmarked doors lining either side, hesitating, my panic mounting, and that's when I heard it. A faintest muffled sound coming from behind the nearest door to my left. My shaking hand grasped the knob, terrified of what might be revealed, but needing to know. It turned smoothly, swinging open noiselessly to bathe me in a sliver of milky moonlight, admitted by long blinded windows. And there in the center of the bare room knelt my fiancée, trussed and gagged with duct tape, her eyes bulging in horror above the strip across her mouth. Behind her, towering menacingly in the shadows, crouched a hulking figure, blade glinting faintly as it pressed to her exposed throat. "Turn around and walk away, now if you want to keep her living," a gravelly male voice rasped from its depths. Rage and terror roared within me in that eternal moment where time seemed frozen. I knew I had no chance against this monster physically, but couldn't abandon Erica to such a fate either. My cop training took over on autopilot, overriding the panic long enough to stall for help. All right, put the knife down and we can talk this through calmly. I breathed steadily through the thundering of my heart. The knife pressed tighter, drawing a bead of crimson that trickled down white skin. No more talking. Leave now, or she dies right here. It snarled in response. Desperation propelled my next action. In one fluid motion, too fast for them to react, I wheeled and chucked my phone hard through the blackened window, shattering the glass outward with an explosive crash. Then, I flung myself backward, crying, "She's in here. Please help us," at the top of my lungs before my head cracked sharply against the floor, and darkness swallowed me under the shrieking rage of our captor. I drifted in and out of awareness as muffled shouts and pounding footsteps approached from below. Strange hands were rolling me over carefully, checking my vitals urgently as distorted voices called out. Through blurred vision, I saw a blurry uniform appear overhead, speaking briskly into a radio. Then my eyelids grew too heavy to hold open any longer, and unconsciousness dragged me under once more. The next time I awoke, antiseptic hospital smells assaulted my senses, groggily prying my gummed eyes open. I registered an unfamiliar ceiling and the steady beeping of monitors nearby. Turning my aching head weakly, revealed Erica dozing in a chair pulled close to my bedside, still pale but visibly unharmed. Relief nearly swallowed me whole in a sob at the sight of her safe. A nurse entered just then, greeting me calmly and checking vitals. "You're very lucky your phone call got help to you in time. The police caught your attacker trying to flee. He's in custody now. You both suffered some bumps and bruises, but nothing too serious thanks to the fast response. Try to rest now." As consciousness faded peacefully this time, snippets of her words filtered through the haze. Attacker, in the house already, previous victims. I let darkness take me willingly then, too exhausted to process the full implications yet. All that mattered was we were alive, and that monster could harm no one else. Rest could wait to sort through the rest. For now, we were safe, and that was enough. So ended our first nightmarish experience with our new home, while we escaped physically unscathed. The ordeal took its toll emotionally and financially. After much debate and counseling, we decided to sell the property rather than undertake renovations there after learning its grim history from the police investigation. Some houses just carry too much darkness, no matter how appealing on the surface. Ours was best left to fade back into the shadows. I'll never forget the day I first laid eyes on the sprawling Victorian manor sitting ominously at the end of the long driveway, half hidden by the dense forest that surrounded it on all sides. My parents had recently decided to move us out to the countryside for a change of pace from city life. They found an amazing deal on this old abandoned estate and jumped at the opportunity despite its clearly run down and neglected state. My excitement at the adventure of exploring a new, big, mysterious old house rapidly faded as we pulled up that first day. There was an ominous air about the place that set my nerves on edge, though I couldn't say why exactly. The ivy-coated brick facade loomed overhead, blank-eyed windows staring down like an unamused frown. An inexplicable feeling of being unwelcome and unwanted washed over me. But my parents were thrilled with the property and its potential, oblivious to my unsettled reaction. They happily began chatting away about renovations and their big renovation plans as we unloaded our modest belongings from the moving truck. I reluctantly joined in the work, hoping the creepy vibes were just my imagination fueled by too many horror films. Maybe a coat of fresh paint and repairs could dispel that gloomy atmosphere seeping from the old manor's walls. Night fell swiftly as we worked, the howling wind stirring through the dense trees, adding an eerie ambience to the creaks and groans echoing from the empty rooms. We assembled some air mattresses and bedding in the largest bedroom to camp out for the night, too exhausted to tackle setting up the trailer we'd brought. I did my best to shake off lingering unease as I drifted off to sleep, surrounded by strange new sounds in the empty historic home. Some deep instinct must have roused me from sleep in the dead of night, heart pounding as I sat up abruptly in the darkness. For several long moments, I strained my ears, senses on high alert for whatever disturbance had triggered my abrupt waking. At first, there was only silence and the whooshing of the wind outside. Then faintly, I detected a strange, familiar sound coming from downstairs. Scraping, dragging noises, faint but growing steadily louder, accompanied by odd scuttling and skittering that raised the tiny hairs on my neck and arms. My imagination ran wild, imagining what could be creeping its way up through the old house in the pitch-black depths of the night. I tried to rationalize it away. An animal had likely gotten inside through one of the many gaps and cracks in the old walls and ceilings. But that didn't explain the distinct scraping and dragging, like furniture or objects being rearranged downstairs in the darkness. Though terrified, I knew I wouldn't be able to handle not investigating. Silently sliding out of my makeshift bed, I grabbed the heavy maglite flashlight and crept from the bedroom on shaking legs. My parents snored unobliviously as I edged into the inky black hallway, the only light spilling from the bedroom behind me. With a trembling hand, I switched on the flashlight and shone its powerful beam down the long corridor. At first, nothing but dust motes swirling in the beam. Then faint scuffling sounds seemed to retreat ahead of the light as I slowly advanced, heart threatening to pound its way from my chest. When I reached the top of the sweeping staircase, the noises had stopped, leaving behind a heavy, oppressive silence. Gulping down my fear, I began descending step by creaking step, sweeping the light methodically before me. The enormous foyer below appeared empty, all shadows fleeing as I illuminated them. Still, that gut instinct told me something was not right. I crossed the space floor to investigate the source of the sounds further, searching behind ornate decorative screens and furniture draped under cloth. A soft clicking noise behind me snapped my head around in alarm, letting out an embarrassingly high-pitched squeak of fright. But again, nothing was there. My imagination and paranoia were running wild, fueling each other's frenzied spiral downward into terror in these creepy, unfamiliar surroundings. I needed to get back upstairs and wake my parents to help search the house. As I turned to do just that, something flashed in my peripheral vision, and a blood-curdling scream was wrenched from my throat before I could stop it. A pale, contorted face was peering out at me from inside a dark mirror, eyes black as the void and grinning mouth full of needle-sharp teeth far too large for a human. I flung the flashlight in shock, the beam briefly lighting the thing before going dark and plunging the room into absolute blackness. My parents' shouts mixed with my own hysterical cries as heavy footfalls thundered down the staircase. Strong arms grabbed me, attempting to still my thrashing about as I shrieked and clung onto the solid warmth of human contact for dear life. Lights flicked on downstairs, revealing only an empty foyer and nothing lurking in the mirror, which showed only our own frightened reflections staring back. My parents tried to calm me, confused and worried by my state, but unable to see any source for my obvious terror. It took hours for my violent shaking to subside, whimpering explanations, doing little to placate their concerns or rationalize what I swore with every fiber of my being I saw in that mirror. Needless to say, sleep was impossible for any of us that night. At dawn, we began packing up our belongings. No amount of convincing from my parents able to persuade me to stay another moment in that horrific house. Years have passed since that traumatic night, but its memory remains seared into my mind as vividly as if it just occurred. There is no logical explanation for what I witnessed in the darkness of that manor mirror. All I know is an evil, otherworldly presence seeks to torment the living from beyond the realm of human comprehension within those creaking walls. I've often wondered if others living there before also felt its oppressive atmosphere or glimpsed fleeting aberrations in that mirror and other reflections throughout the house. Whatever entity dwells there clearly wished us gone as soon as we moved in and succeeded in driving us from the property in a single night through terrifying means. To this day, I can't recall ever feeling a more palpable malevolent energy eating from any location. My parents remain perplexed by the events that transpired. Unable to credit the horror, I continue insisting is truth. But I know without a doubt something unnatural and sinister lurks within those moldering Victorian walls, preying on those foolish enough to dwell beneath its shadowed eaves, even if only for a night. I pray no one else will ever have to undergo the nightmare I experienced in that accursed old manor. Its ghosts will haunt me till my dying day.